When George Lucas switched from making the original trilogy to the prequel trilogy, there obviously needed to be a replacement for the stormtroopers. Some sort of cannon fodder. Someone for the good guys to fight against. Someone that would be intimidating and interesting, but the audience wouldn't have to care too much about them. And there, George Lucas introduced us to the battle droids. Terrifying war machines, capable of taking over entire planets and defeating armies of Jedi. That is, until they became silly.
Drop your weapon. I said drop them. Roger.
So how did we go from this
If they're down here, sir, we'll find them.
to this? Let's dive in and explore. When we're first introduced to the droids in the Phantom Menace, they're a pretty big threat, at least to the normal characters, if not to the Jedi. They capture the Queen and her guards and the people of Naboo and take them off to camps, where they're presumably kept as hostages and prisoners for the duration of the Naboo battles.
Captain, take them to Camp 4.
Roger.
Sure, most of the Jedi can cut through an individual battle droid or even a squad pretty easily, but when there's a high number of them, like Attack of the Clones, the Jedi struggle too. Although they're weak against individual Jedi, the droids start out very serious. The first real joke that we see about them is maybe when that one captain says,
Uh-oh.
It's a small throwaway joke, but it sets the tone for the droids' progression moving forward. Over time, we see that the droids are definitely scary, but also funny in their own right, and especially as they get more intelligent through the movies. It's odd that you can see as the droids get more independent and more intelligent, they get more of their own personality, which makes them funnier, even as they become technically scarier in a battle sense.
You stupid little astro droid.
This is actually an interesting story development, watching the droids' technology improve over time. It's good for the world building and interesting to watch. It keeps the story and the antagonists fresh. But of course, there's an out-of-movie reason for this as well. As the prequels go on from episode 1 to 3, it gets a lot darker. And as it gets darker, the droids get funnier to offset that. In episode 1, the droids are generic antagonist fodder, like stormtroopers, and they act the part. By Attack of the Clones, the super battle droids replace that, and the regular battle droids become more like slightly funny gimmicks, to keep the story light as the intense things happen around them. In the Battle of Geonosis, though, despite the funny parts, you can still see the dark undertones.
Die, Jedi dogs! What did I say?
Then, in Revenge of the Sith, arguably the darkest movie of the Star Wars saga, the droids are basically treated as jokes. This obviously is used to lighten the tone a bit, so that the movie's not so heavy and dark as it could be without them. But it also, in some ways, shows some character progression, especially for Anakin. In The Phantom Menace, the droids are one of the main antagonists. If not the primary one like Darth Maul and Darth Sidious, they're at least the standard enemy that our heroes have to fight. But by Revenge of the Sith, you can see the Jedi cut through them with ease, with absolutely no worries whatsoever, like they've done it a million times. Sure, it's funny to watch, but it also sets a dark tone that the war has been going on so long that the original antagonists from the Phantom Menace are now just jokes because our characters have been in battle for so much time that they're experts at fighting. It just goes to show that what was once one of the main threats is now just a sideshow, because the world has gotten so much darker and so much more dangerous. The reaction of young Anakin Skywalker from the Phantom Menace to a bunch of battle droids is very different than the Jedi Knight Anakin to the same amount of battle droids, or even more. But further than that, if we want to take a really deep dive in, we can look at the sociological implications of this. The story of the prequels is one about a fascist government rising to power, and you can see how Palpatine plays both sides of the war and all sides of the government to do this. But when you look back to the beginning, what does he start with? What is the main thing that he begins his rise to power using? A bunch of mindless robots. Unthinking machines who follow every order, no matter how brutal. Sure, they can be foolish and they can be silly, but their lack of independent intelligence just shows how easy they are to manipulate by Palpatine. Of course, they're the easiest to manipulate of all, because they're programmable. It's a warning about how people can be used when they don't have individual thought, and how even though they may seem funny, or just silly, or laughable, eventually they can become dangerous, and that's something to watch out for. But there's another side of this too. As the droids slowly become more advanced and more independent, Palpatine eventually loses use for them and switches over to the clones, who follow his every order. Until eventually, sometime between the films, Palpatine gives up on clones and reverts to an army of regular stormtroopers brainwashed into his empire. The dangers and the limits of this sort of thinking can be most clearly seen in the end of the Clone Wars TV series, during Order 66. While most of the clones instantly turn on the Jedi without much thought, a few rebel, and that's a powerful message. It shows that if you strive for independence and your own learning, you can avoid being manipulated. You see the clones fighting the droids, and both sides are mostly just treated as mindless soldiers. But when you look deeper into the books, the video games, the TV shows, and even deeper into the movies themselves, you can see that over time the clones and the droids both start to gain more of their own independence and their own independent thought.
No wonder he got blasted. He's one of those older models programmed by a central computer. Not us. We're independent thinkers. Roger, 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 roger.
I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, and also, of course, a great part of world building, which is what Star Wars is known for. So why did the droids lose their intimidating voice and switch to a much sillier tone, with much sillier phrases? Well, there's a lot of reasons, so take your pick. But in the end, I think it was a good choice. Although I miss the cool sound of the original battle droids, the new voices really suit Revenge of the Sith and the Clone Wars, bringing some much-needed levity to the darkness, and adding some interesting questions to the lore of Star Wars. Thanks for watching the video. Which battle droid voice do you prefer? Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.